Good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County and the Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium, I welcome you to this forum for candidates for Pierce County Council Districts 2 and 3. Thank you to both the candidates and to the audience for taking time to participate in this forum. My name is Cynthia Stewart and I will be the moderator. And here to welcome you, representing the Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium, is Michael Merritt, Chair of the Board. Michael.
Thank you, Cynthia. The Affordable Housing Consortium welcomes the candidates. The consortium is a membership organization of about 60 organizations who are the mainline organizations that develop, finance, design, build, manage affordable housing, and provide the services to the people who live in them. So these are the Pierce County nonprofit and private developers, housing authorities, the mainline banks, architectural firms, construction companies, and the social service providers. As an organization, we're very interested in affordable housing, what it takes to get it done, and its value. And for that reason, we are very grateful to the candidates for your willingness to participate in this discussion. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you. I'd just like to add that both of our organizations are nonpartisan. We do not support or oppose any candidate or any political party. The League of Women Voters has had a mission for the last 100 years to encourage informed and active participation of citizens in government. And that's why we conduct these candidate forums, in order to provide voters with good information on which to base their votes. This forum is for the general election, which will be held on November 3rd. And I will say again at the end, and again now, please turn in your ballots as soon as you get them. Do not wait till November 3rd. So with us at this forum in alphabetical order are District 2, Sarah Rumbaugh and Hans Zeiger. And in District 3, the candidates are Amy Kruger and Joe Zeitzkin. Joe Zeitzkin indicated about an hour ago that he was unable to be here after all, so we will be proceeding without him tonight. Our timekeeper is Terry Baker. She will hold up cards to let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining, well, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and 15 seconds, and then when it's time to stop. When you see the card that says stop, you may finish a short sentence, but please do not keep going. Each candidate has up to 2 minutes for an opening statement, and these will be given in alphabetical order. And then after that, the order of answering the questions will be rotated, and each candidate will get 90 seconds to answer each question. At the end of that period of time, the closing statements will be up to 1 minute and will be given in reverse order of the opening statements. The candidates were given the questions in advance, and we have quite a few of them. So tonight we are not taking audience questions the way we often do. So I'd like to start by the opening statements and in alphabetical order and by district. District 2, Sarah Rumbaugh. Would you please give your 2-minute opening statement?
Well, first, I want to say good evening and thank you to the League of Women Voters and to the Affordable Housing Consortium for putting this together. I think it's a wonderful tool for people running for office to find out what the issues are and to know ahead of time what our job should be as elected officials. My name is Sarah Rumbaugh. I'm running for Pierce County Council District 2, and I'm just going to do this for Senator Zeiger and myself. Our districts include Puyallup, Northeast Tacoma, Dash Point, Browns Point, Milton Fife, Edgewood, Pacific, Sumner, and Lakeland Hills. And Senator Zeiger can correct me if I missed any areas. One thing I'm running because I believe that there are people in our community that have not been represented who are suffering because we have not dealt with homelessness, affordable housing, family wage jobs, and a 1/10% for behavioral mental health. COVID has shown us that we need affordable housing now more than ever. We found that people were losing their housing, are suffering sooner than we thought possible. Even after just one paycheck, they're not able to afford their place. When we put out rental assistance, they had applications of 3,700 the first week. Our county does not have a plan for how we're going to go ahead with affordable housing. And I believe that's because we've had 16 years of representation that hasn't put this issue first. And when I'm elected to the county council, I will make sure that this is one of the issues that we make a priority so that we can go ahead and take care of the issues that are in front of the people who live in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Hans Zeiger for 2 minutes.
Well, good evening, and thanks to the League of Women Voters and Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium. I've really appreciated the various opportunities I've had to interact with both organizations over the past decade that I've served in the legislature. And I always appreciate the way that the League promotes civil and constructive dialogue in its forums, and the way that League members are so passionate about deliberative democracy. And for the consortium, I appreciate the coalition building work that it's done to strengthen the movement for affordable housing here in Pierce County. The appeal to me of moving from the state to the county level is the opportunity to go to work on the ground level of local governance and do everything we can to give people a voice in determining their own destiny at a really critical time for Pierce County. So what do I want to accomplish? Let me just give 3 things quickly. For one thing, I want to work with people of all political affiliations to make our neighborhoods stronger. We want neighborhoods that are connected, inclusive, walkable, and affordable, where neighbors can make a difference in shaping the future of our community. And the council should be proactive in supporting that. And that includes a lot of what we'll be talking about tonight with housing. The second thing is we need an economic base that can sustain our community as we recover from COVID-19. And we need a council that will advocate for our local businesses as they create jobs and allow more people to work right here in Pierce County. And finally, we need a county budget that prioritizes public safety and health. And I'm including mental health and substance use disorder treatment when I talk about that. So over the past decade that I've been serving in my community and state government, I've seen how people can make a difference in local government. I want to be part of that in this time, and I look forward to getting started. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we go to District 3, Amy Kruger, 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I have a little different approach in my opening statement. I'm kind of new in this arena as opposed to Hans being more experienced. But I am Amy Kruger, and I'm here tonight to share why I am your best investment for the Pierce County Council in District 3. And so it was back in the 90s that I was driving home from a business trip, and I get this urge to have something different than rock and roll, and I hit the AM button. And there was some guy talking about Olympia and the things that the legislature was doing, and that struck a chord with me. Because it was odd for somebody who had zero interest in government, and I had been selling video for about a dozen years, and that was way more fun than watching TVW. But it was that single event that put me on a path to be involved with local politics, and that I also began working with the state and the county. My job was helping constituents navigate their government. So now here I am, over 25 years later, out to work in the front line, using my experience to stand firm for the values shared with me over the years by constituents. That's work hard, play hard, respect your neighbors. And it's easy for me to relate to the district. I worked in the cornfields, restaurants, secretarial, and I belong to several local organizations, and I do have some elected experience. So I will focus on maintaining civil government, our dignity, our spirit of self-determination, prioritizing our government services, doing the most good with what we have. I will approach county policies like you do at home. Don't spend more than you earn, put away for a rainy day, respect nature, offer assistance to those in need, guard your family, and defend the defenders. Our district, by the way, is like from the Ording Soldiers Home out to Mount Rainier, over to McKenna, up through Spanaway Lake, and back down to the Ording Soldiers Home. Thank you kindly for your time.
Thank you very much. So now we'll go to the first question, and we'll begin with Hans Zeiger to answer it first. So please offer your view of what should the county's role be in addressing the shortage of affordable housing for low-income residents. And this will be for 90 seconds.
Thanks. You know, it's becoming harder and harder for working families to afford rent or pay a mortgage. And I hear from constituents who talk about the growing cost of housing and the impact that that's having on them. There's also a lot of regional and statewide pressure to develop new affordable housing. And we look at the growth projections in the coming years, and we have to deal with that. One of the things that at the beginning of this past legislative session, many legislators became aware of was an Up for Growth study that was released that shows we are 225,000 units short statewide of where we ought to be when it comes to housing supply. So we need to do our part to grow affordable housing stock here in Pierce County. And just quickly here are 4 things I believe we can do more of. Number 1, make it easier for existing homeowners to develop accessory dwelling units on their own property. Number 2, incentivize home sharing arrangements to create low-cost options for people who need them or even to prevent homelessness. Number 3, permit new types of housing like tiny houses. I got legislation passed in 2019 with strong bipartisan support to make it easier for local jurisdictions to move forward with tiny houses. And then 4th, permit more condominium housing following last year's condo liability reform, which will encourage home ownership plus a smaller footprint for people across a range of incomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Vumba, do you want to hear the question again, or are you okay with it?
No, I'm okay. That's great. Thank you so much. So one of the things that we know is that a lot of people are rent burdened in our county as far as what they pay for rent, and they're paying more than 30% of their income in rent. And I believe that the role of the county is to be that facilitator to get all of the different players, people who are involved in building housing and who care about housing together. And so we need to be that convener, facilitator who brings together all the different parties to make sure that this is the issue that we're working on and we understand that we're on the same page as far as we moving forward. You know, we need to incentivize developers at every level that exists so that we are building all types of housing, market rate housing, affordable housing, low income housing. And we need to protect groups that are at risk, like the elderly and youth. We also need to make sure that we're providing tenant protections when we talk about our job as the county council. And I have experience as a city planner, and I think that I could use that when we're looking at the zoning and the Growth Management Act to make sure that we're providing ideas that will create more affordable housing in our community. And I believe strongly that as the county, we should make sure that our message is that we know this is number one issue by making sure that when we get together, we decide that that's a priority for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Amy Kruger.
Okay. Well, I believe the county should be the lead in coordinating federal, state, and local agencies in conjunction with nonprofits and foundations to plan for and procure funding that can advance the housing availability to those needing affordable housing. So it's like, in a nutshell, the county should define and determine the needs, identify and prioritize the levels of resources that are needed, discern obstacles and seek to solve them, identify other funders for nonprofits and foundations, and recognize our financial limits. The county could also identify other obstacles to affordable housing, the taxes, the regulations, the land availability, and I would like to see more tax-exempt foundation involvement, that they do have a responsibility to the public, and I think they should have more responsibility in helping to fund the needed shortage for homes.
Thank you. So the next question is, please offer your view of what should the county's role be in addressing its shortage of shelter and services for residents who are experiencing homelessness. And we'll start this one with Sarah Vumba.
Well, I have a lot of experience with this because I've worked with nonprofits. I'm on the board of Associated Ministries. I've also done work with Catholic Community Services, and we don't have enough shelter support in our community. And it is the nonprofits that are providing that necessary portion of the road to getting people into housing. And we do this one night count, which this year showed that we were 14% more people were homeless than the year before, which I believe it's an undercount, that it's actually higher than that. And we need to partner with nonprofits to increase the number of temporary shelters available. I also think we need to do more to try to keep people from being homeless. We need to look at how do we keep people from becoming unhoused? And the other thing we need to do is think more about, again, I think we need more housing. And as much as shelters are great, the idea of getting people into permanent housing, I really believe, is something that we need to do. Tiny homes have been a great addition to our community, but I also believe that there are people who want to live outside, and we need to provide them with safe areas for that as well, where there's security and wraparound services. And I believe that the county should provide social services for more of these people. And that's the role of the county, is really to be that caregiver and a part of that continuum and getting people into permanent housing.
Thank you. Next, Amy Kruger.
Okay. Well, similar to housing, the shelter is of utmost importance, particularly in emergencies and chronic needs. I believe we should consider the level of services that are required for specific needs. Is this a matter of life and death, something in the sense of like domestic violence? Is it drug use? Are children involved? Are there disabilities? Because services can be prioritized in like a triage manner. So I believe the county does a pretty good job already, but it is continually working to address the need for more shelter. And I believe that we should also look beyond the state into other states and see what things that they are doing as well in order to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Hans Seiger.
I think we need to do four things. This isn't the only four things, but four things that we really ought to do. So first, we need to grow the really impressive homelessness diversion work that's being led by the county and associated ministries, Catholic Community Services, and others. And that's all about getting people the help that they need from the moment they enter the coordinated entry system, whatever that may be. It really recognizes that each person brings a different set of circumstances when they are on the verge of homelessness, and how can we get them on a different path as quickly as possible. The second thing is we need more emergency shelter beds. And I've seen that there's strong bipartisan support for increasing that at the state level. And I believe that we can grow support for that at the county level. We can play a convening role with cities and with private sector stakeholders and others to put together some deals for emergency shelter. We know there's a need throughout the county, but we know that these kinds of facilities are going to require a lot of community buy-in. I think we can get that done if we bring everybody to the table. Third, we need to provide opportunities for people who want to get on a path to self-sufficiency. And that the best way to do that I've seen is to provide supported employment programs like Vallejo Vocation in Tacoma that's just doing such tremendous work. People may have barriers to employment through a criminal record or the difficulty of interviewing for a job, but let's provide opportunities for people who would like to go out and work. And then finally, let's grow our behavioral health system. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk more about that in the time ahead here. Thanks.
Thank you. So the next question is, how do you think the COVID-19 pandemic has changed or should change the county's consideration of affordable housing policies and initiatives? And we'll start this one with Amy Kruger.
Okay, I'm just trying to find my notes. So, because I had, sorry for this, but I'm trying to so that I think the affordable the housing with the COVID is basically sorry. I think the county has actually done very well in addressing the COVID for housing. It exposed a weakness within our government associations, our government agencies, and how they address it. Because the feeling I was getting down at the county was people felt blindsided by it and they were scrambling to do it. But I believe they regrouped very well and they have been able to get finances out to the agencies, be able to get help for the people who needed rental assistance, who needed mortgage assistance, who needed food assistance, etc. So I think they did an excellent job in this, and it was a lesson well learned and for future references. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we'll go to Hans Zeiger.
I serve as the co-chair of a legislative executive task force on poverty reduction, and we had a presentation at our last meeting about the impacts of COVID on families and individuals living in poverty. And we've been very focused in our task force on intergenerational poverty, but as we think about something like this pandemic, it really has created a lot of situational poverty. And there's a lot of implications for housing when we think about that. And then looking forward, as CARES money will go away, as different policy changes and funding changes happen, there will be a cliff, and there will continue to be some financial difficulties for some in our community. So we have to address that. We have to account for that, and we also have to make responsible decisions as we think about spending county dollars, putting together our budget. And I think we've learned a lot of lessons about what really matters from this time period, and that'll impact the way we budget. Good news is we're in better shape than some other local governments, and that's because we've had responsible spending in recent years when it comes to keeping a healthy reserve that provides some cushion. That said, we're going to need to have some level of restraint, and we're going to need to focus on prioritizing where we're going to get the best return on our investment. And to me, the priorities are clear. We've got to make our investments in public safety and health.
Thank you. Sarah Lumba,
Could you repeat the question again? Thank you.
how do you think that the COVID-19 pandemic has or should change the county's consideration of affordable housing policies and initiatives?
I think that, as I said in my beginning statement, that COVID has exposed that people are living paycheck to paycheck, and that people really are struggling to afford to live here, and that we are not providing the necessary assistance to people that will help them be healthy and be able to stay in our county. You know, we need to think about how we're going to better support people and their health. And I think that a 0.1% for behavioral mental health will do a lot to help people who are struggling. We found that during this pandemic, people have needed mental health assistance and they can't find it. I've talked to people on the phone who never thought they would need help like this, and they've had to go out of our county, if they can afford it, to get it in King County. And this is the time where we need to invest in our future as a county and make sure that we have the resources available to help people who are struggling with behavioral and mental health necessities. And it's clear to me that that affordable housing is not just a necessity, it's a priority for us to take care of this. And we need to make this something that we look at day one when I'm elected to the county council. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is, what are you expecting to happen when the governor's eviction moratorium expires? So we've just heard earlier that it has been extended from next week to the end of the year. But what should the county do to prepare for that? And we'll start with Hans Zeiger.
Well, we do need a plan for coming out of this time period, and that's some of the feedback that I've given as I've had opportunity to talk with the governor's office about the eviction moratorium policy. Is we need a plan for getting out of this. There's a lot of interest in a variety of stakeholders in doing a robust rental assistance package, and whether that comes out of federal funds, state funds, local funds. I think there's bipartisan interest in doing that at some level. I don't know that we can have enough rental assistance to compensate for all of the impacts that have happened over recent months, but we do need to do something that will stabilize that, both as far as landlords and tenants are concerned. And so we at the county will need to look for those dollars where we can find them to make sure there has been some assistance already, but we're going to need more in the months ahead.
Thank you. Sarah Lumba.
So when the rental assistance ends and we are moving forward, we're going to see a lot of people who have never been homeless before experiencing the moment where they don't know where they're going to be. And so I think that the landscape looks really different, that it's going to look different than what we're used to seeing as far as people who are homeless. And I think as a county, we aren't going to be able to do this by ourselves. We definitely need support from the state, the federal government, finding those funds. We also need to think about when we start to see these evictions, how are we working with renters and tenants to do mediation, which might be a way for us to help soften the blow and find a plan for people so that they can stay in their housing. Possibly it doesn't lead to an eviction. We're able to keep people housed that way. But we need a long-term plan, and that's that this is good and bad. We realize that we have something that we never thought we would need, which is this rental assistance. And I appreciate that people are concerned about this. And I think that because we've never experienced this before, we're all on a learning curve, and we're going to have to look and see what other states are doing about this to solve the issue. And like I said, we're going to have to look to other partners to help us solve this, this major problem that's heading down the track as we head out of when the moratorium ends in December now, December 31st.
Thank you. Amy Kruger.
Yes, this is a new path going this way, and I agree we need to have some short-term and some long-term plans put into place. I expect chaos to erupt because I've never experienced what could come down the pike. But if we look at our services that we have today, and if we need to prioritize what we have to have, what we don't have to have, ways that we can save taxpayers' dollars so that they can make their payments. Maybe we'll have to cut property taxes. I don't know what we can do on that. I expect we need to be able to brainstorm with the experts who are in financing. Are there ways to bond things out? What kind of help will the federal government have and the state? So it will be a new avenue. We'll have to work together, brainstorming to be able to address the different issues that will come upon us. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next question is specific to this county again. In 2019, the county received a report at commission from the Burke Consulting Company. That report analyzed and recommended affordable housing policies and funding options. You received a link to that report. What is your general view of the Burke recommendations? And this one will start with Sarah Lombard.
Well, I thought it was really, I read through the Burke report and I think it was very thorough. They did a good job. They had all the different partners, people who are doing affordable housing, who are developers and nonprofits, and they had the planners actually interviewed. I think it's a thorough document, and I think that the information they came up with is really interesting. The one thing that stood out to me is that developers would rather build something in King County than Pierce County because it was predictable. And so that says to me that our county needs to do a better job of making sure that when people come in to do development, they know what to expect. They know that the funding sources are there, that they know that the people who are in charge in the county council see this as a significant investment, and they want to put dollars behind that and streams for raising the money so that it's there for them to use. And that also that the zoning code has more flexibility and is written for people who want to do good things for your community. It seems to me that they have a lot of great ideas, and I'm sure we're going to go through those. Residential small lot zoning, planned development districts, they had and bonus housing densities are wonderful things, but we have to be ready to do these things and be serious about it. And I think that our zoning code right now doesn't really show that we're serious because it's all over the place. And I think some consistency would help make it easier for people who want to do development here, come and do affordable development.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Amy Kruger.
Yes. So both studies did do in-depth research on incentives and systems and funding. But what I didn't notice was if there was research from other states, nor did I see issues about the cost of building addressed. So I'm thinking that we should review building standards, and the mandates, and look at a cost of benefit analysis. There are steps in building that do add to the cost that are not necessarily regarding safety, such as maybe the insulation rating is too high. You've got gravel, you've got pavement and permeable pavement. We need to have the flexibility. So, so let the builder and the buyer maybe customize the amenities and have things that don't compromise the integrity of the building. And I'd also like to recognize the concern for mobile parks. So across the US, there are 1,000 resident-owned mobile home parks offering long-term security and agency to the owners. I would like us to address that more, have a path that is getting to where the mobile home owners can own their own land. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Hans Seiger.
Regarding first the League of Women Voters study, I really appreciate the way that the League has engaged communities throughout our county in a discussion of shelter for people who are experiencing homelessness. And I've gotten to be part of those conversations in multiple settings, and I always come away learning something new that I can apply to my policy work, and I come away with the hope and confidence that that we can work together to address the challenge of homelessness. As far as the Burke report is concerned, I really do think it is good to stop and take a look at the incentives that the county provided a decade ago with expediting permitting, fee waivers, density bonuses, and so forth. Are those incentives working? Do they really result in more affordable housing? And the answer seems to be they have to some degree, but that we can put more teeth behind them, that there's more we can do. Density bonuses are helpful. Fee waivers and public grants could be helpful if we had access to more resources. And we really don't give enough of an incentive for developers to build affordable within their market rate projects. So I do think that the list of considerations that are in that Burke report are well worth serious consideration by the council. I would also agree with what Amy Kruver was saying about just that we need to figure out ways to bring down some of those costs that are built into any construction project that I think would help to improve our ability to increase overall supply of housing in our county.
Thank you. So the next question is, what is your view of the recommendation to provide clearer and more effective financial incentives for private developers to include affordable housing in their market rate mix? What specific incentives would you be willing to adopt, if any, and why or why not? And we'll start with Amy Kruger.
So I have a short answer with this one, because it seems to me everyone knows that when you're working with the government and all of the paperwork that it involves, it becomes very tedious and very onerous, and it requires a lot of patience to do the job. So for many, the hassle isn't worth the investment of their time and resources. So I believe by simplifying the application and streamlining the process is what would be beneficial and most recommended to give the incentives for the developers to do more affordable housing at a market rate. Thanks.
Thank you. Hans Seiger?
Well, I particularly appreciate, recommendations for, making the qualification and application process easier, giving developers more flexibility in the design aspect of affordable housing, as far as parking, proximity to schools and parks and that kind of thing. When it comes to having more clarity and more funding for some of those incentives, I think both are very important. So how do we bring that to bear? I would start with a recent new tool that local governments have and that Pierce County has availed itself of. That's House Bill 1406 that was passed last year by the legislature. I was pleased to support that in the legislature, and that's a sales tax credit that the county can capture to use for affordable housing. So let's figure out how we can use that to leverage other resources that come, say, from the Housing Finance Commission or other incentives that we are already providing. But then we can add some new incentives to that. And the goal here is really to create enough of an incentive for a given project to happen and do it in a way that we can replicate that throughout the county time and again.
Thank you. Sarah Mamba.
Well, I'm going to echo what Senator Zeiger said about the 1406 funds. I think that's something that we should take advantage of. And I also believe that one of the things that I noticed was that they had these, that there was money put aside for impact fees for the county, but it wasn't, you know, there's not a sure way that we're going to have that funding. It was just stuck there. And so we need to find a way to raise those funds so that we have like a designated fee so that the developers know there's going to be that money there for impact fees so that they can apply to not pay for these impact fees. I also, going on to state again, is I was a city planner, and developers don't like uncertainty. And I think that we need to make this process a streamlined process that they know it's going to happen each time. That's why they've been building in King County, is because King County has done such a good job of making it a friendly and predictable experience to come in and develop there. We need to provide I think we need more market rate housing. Just a market rate housing is a great incentive to go along with our affordable housing, and just the idea that it's more predictable to come develop here because we've set up a system that allows them to know that there's going to be funding sources available to do the work that they want to do to provide affordable housing.
Thank you. So you've all touched on the next one a little bit, but not on one element of it at all yet. What is your view of the recommendation for more flexibility in zoning and design requirements for affordable housing developments to make them less costly to build? What changes would you be willing to adopt, if any, and why or why not? And we'll start with Hans Zeiger.
So no question, we need more flexibility. I believe that would be meaningful to our private sector partners in having more affordable housing. And the reality is each neighborhood is different. And so there are going to be pros and cons of any location for applying a particular incentive. So yes, let's have a minimum threshold for design standards. There should be some basic proximity to schools and services, but let's not make it so strict that we're actually impeding the effectiveness of affordable housing incentives from the get-go.
Thank you. Amy Kruger?
So yes, flexibility is paramount in like zoning. Innovative design. So I look up some different things, and I had seen where they'd taken cargos and they had revamped them and stacked them and made some fabulous looking houses. And today I saw where they had a kit for making an arch, which would be another idea for housing. So we should have our codes where it's easier to place these. You know, builders in the county need to be able to adapt to new technology or ideas. There's times they're out in the field and they're like, oh, well, we can move this over here and put that over there and have the same goal, but it's not in the plans. We can't do it. We don't have the right permit. It would be good if we had that kind of flexibility. So as long as the goal isn't compromised, flexibility on the path to get there is a winning idea. Design standards too should be flexible and based on structural integrity and consumer choice, not just the IBCC, the International Building Code Council. So while a building's structure should never be compromised, adding features and expenses to the consumer or what they don't want should be a personal choice. Also, some of the energy codes could be re-looked at on a cost-benefit analysis, where you have an HVAC system that's going into a house where it costs more, that will, in the long run, than what it will save you while you're running it. So its cost-benefit analysis would be one of my best things to look at doing, and then the red tape reduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Rumbaugh.
So I definitely we've been talking about flexibility, which is great. Flexibility in design is important, and allowing that I think that sometimes developers know best what works, and they might know the best new thing because they're the ones in the field doing those projects. I know that when we talk about this, I think density bonuses work great, and that's something that we should really allow. I'm concerned for how we're looking at racial equity when we do this. I'm on the Human Rights Commission, and we're working on a housing equity task force right now with the Planning Commission. So when we're talking about all of this, we need to be thinking about how racism has played into housing, and how as we start to look at areas to provide this affordable housing, that we're not removing people and because we're going to be moving into projects that might already be presently there, that when we're adding this new housing, that it's not changing the neighborhood in some way, so that there's less areas for low wealth people that might already be located in that neighborhood. I think we need to make sure that we have those proper incentives, not incentives, but the amenities that are necessary, like transportation, parks, and schools close by. And so we can't really, I don't want to compromise those things in order to have the flexibility, but we need to work on those in together in unison with developers to make sure that the affordable housing is near those amenities.
Thank you. So the next question is, what is your view of the recommendation that the county contribute surplus land for affordable housing development? Please explain why you agree with this recommendation or why you do not. And we're going to kind of change the order. So Sarah Rumbaugh, you can go first.
So I didn't hear your question very well. I'm sorry.
What is your view of the recommendation that the county contribute surplus land for affordable housing development? Please explain why you agree or disagree with that.
Thank you very much for repeating it. So I think I would love to see the map of all of the surplus land that we have, because I think being able to use that land to build affordable housing, and I would think that this would be nonprofits doing this, probably Habitat for Humanity and the Housing Authority doing this on our public land that's owned by the county. That would be either leased or sold to them for some low rate. That's the kind of projects that we want to have, and we want to have them again near transportation systems, so that if we don't already have a transit line lined up, we need to be thinking about how that becomes a part of that project. And so I really do support this. I think this is a great idea. And I think I remember hearing on one of the forums that they had done this kind of project somewhere else, I think in King County. And I think we should definitely be looking at other counties and what work they've done with their surplus land, so that we don't need to create a new thing. If somebody's doing something that's working, we should try to mimic that and figure out what we can learn from it so that we can do a better job getting those kind of projects built. But I think that that's a fabulous idea.
Thank you. Amy Kruger.
Yeah. So while home ownership is a fabulous goal, because it is what preserves society, and everyone should have a home. We'd love to have homes, but we have to be thoughtful on how we get there. And for the surplus land, it's not possible to know today the needs that we will have in 100 years. And we have an issue of gifting with public assets that would need to be considered. So we need to have a thoughtful review on this. And also, the public already does support, I believe it's about 60 community gardens. And then there is Conservation Futures, which is a program that directs taxpayer dollars for purchasing land. And then it would be a great time to do an inventory on the county's land ownership, that which is private, commercial, parks, state, DNR, land trusts, etc., so that we have an idea of how much available land there could be, and then do a good program or a think tank meeting on how to handle that possible situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hans Zeiger.
Well, I think it's absolutely worth exploring as an option. Other jurisdictions are doing that, and I think we ought to take that inventory of lands that could possibly be used in this way for affordable housing and open it up for a full conversation and look into the possibilities. I would agree that we should go into that with some level of caution, simply because we want to make sure that the process is set up fairly and ethically and all of the rest. But I think it's absolutely worth exploring.
Thank you. So in addition to the county study by Burke, the League of Women Voters has produced a study, which Hans Zeiger referred to a few minutes ago, on affordable housing and shelter in Pierce County. You were also sent a link to that study. That study suggests some of the same strategies as the Burke study, such as inclusionary zoning. What is your view of the strategy of inclusionary zoning, through which private developers will be required to include affordable housing in their market rate projects in exchange for density bonuses and other consideration? Why would you support or why would you oppose this? And we'll start with Amy Kruger.
Yeah. Again, I have a short answer on this. I'm not inclined to support mandates like that. I think it creates more of a hostile environment, and that if a builder wants to agree to that, I think that would be his choice and an awesome opportunity for him. Thank you.
Thank you. And Hans Zeiger.
Well, I think we really ought to look at some inclusionary tools. I wouldn't go as far as to mandate things if there are ways that we can use inclusionary incentives. I think that's really a better way to go. And I would say it's even more important to think about ways that we can incrementally develop within existing neighborhoods. And we can do that by making it easier to build ADUs, duplexes, triplexes, creating new options we've already talked about, like tiny houses, and finding ways for more people to share existing housing, whether it's through a formal shared housing program or otherwise. So I think there's a lot that we can do within our existing patterns of development to incrementally allow for people to find affordable places to live.
Thank you. Let's see, Sarah, should we talk? We haven't asked you this question yet. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that there's a time and place for everything. And I think that inclusionary zoning probably works when you have like areas that are pretty dense in development that have all of the key elements you're looking for, and you're looking to get this type of development built in this one like very pretty dense area. So I'm thinking this probably works better in cities than it probably would work in some of the county areas that we have if we're talking about more of the rural subdivision types of areas that are in District 2, which is when we're talking about this, I'm thinking about District 2 right now. And so I think that there's tools there that might be a good idea, but we should like actually, I want to make sure that we always come across as friendly and consistent for developers in our county. And so I am interested in this, but I would like to hear from developers what their experience has been with inclusionary zoning in other counties before I sell yes on this idea. But I do think that's something that we should look at, and it is a tool that could be useful in more dense areas of the county.
Thank you. So the next question is, what methods would you support to enhance the development of housing for households with lower income levels than 80% of area median income? Does anybody know what that was? Did you hear the question, or should I repeat it?
Can you repeat it again? Thank you.
It's something's interfering with the sound here. So what methods would you support to enhance the development of housing for households with lower than 80% of area median income? And why would you support those? So we'll start with Hans Zeiger.
Well, I want to go back to that list that I established early on, because I think it's really important that we think about, and I think for the most part we're talking about incremental forms of development, but we're also talking about some new options that we would have for the development of affordable housing. And so, I think that we need to have more home sharing. I think that we need to make it easier for existing homeowners to develop accessory dwelling units on their own property. I think we need to permit new types of housing like tiny houses. And I think there's also a part of the condominium market that is more accessible to more people, and we ought to encourage that, since that I think has the potential to expand as we grow our housing stock here in Pierce County. And I think taking these options together, I think the basic summary of what we need more of is we need more options, and we need more incentives. There's also approaches where we can mandate things, where we can subsidize things. But I think on the whole, to really get at what we are aiming at, which is more affordable housing in Pierce County, I think we need incentives and we need options.
Thank you. Sarah Rumbaugh.
So I think the things that Senator Zeiger brought up are great, but they're not going to really do enough to make a dent in the need for 10 to 15,000 more units of affordable housing in our county that we are already in need of. And I think that this is really where the county gets to show its ability to work with other partners. And that would be like the Tacoma Housing Authority and groups like definitely the Tacoma Housing Authority and possibly the Pierce Housing Authority, if it ever became a healthy organization, to help them build these projects, because they're going to involve funding that's public funding to build, because we're talking about projects that private developers aren't going to want to do because there's not the profit in it. And so that's why this market is here. And that's why we have a muscle with the Tacoma Housing Authority. They've shown us how to do this, and this needs to be replicated, their ideas throughout our county, so that we can provide enough affordable housing in low income housing that's necessary. We're just not going to get it with all of the ADUs and other tiny homes. It's just not going to be enough, and there aren't enough neighborhoods that really want to have ADUs. I've talked to people who live in the subdivisions out here. They are not interested in ADUs. So I think we need to look for this public funding coming to our county so we can build those kind of projects.
Thank you. Amy Kruger.
Okay. I believe that, working with the private nonprofits can be very strategic in finding housing and discovering new ideas. And also, I think we should follow up. There was a White House executive order on eliminating barriers to affordable housing, and that should be on the county's checklist of research. Being more creative with the housing options, as we have spoken about before, I think is paramount in order to get some shelter, some roofs over people's heads. As much as I would love to, wave a magic wand and be able to have housing for everybody, that's just not possible. But by having brainstorming sessions of people working with ideas and having the flexibility to put things out there, I'd love, the rural area is a great place for having some ADUs, and there are, in order to have additional housing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So the next question is, would you support or oppose establishment of a local housing trust fund or a public land trust for affordable housing using local tax sources? Why or why not? And we'll start with Sarah Lumba.
Well, I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to leave money that's available that we aren't using. And I do believe that's a good idea. I'm just thinking about right now in COVID, how that opportunity could be, we could like go after these funds and set up a trust fund when we're talking about a 1/10% for behavioral mental health. So if I'm already talking that that's something I believe we should pass, it's hard for me to imagine without going through the budget and talking about priorities during COVID, how we're going to go ahead with a trust fund for housing. But that doesn't mean that I don't believe we shouldn't look into that. I think that we should put everything on the table and we should discuss what options we have and what funding we presently have available, and see also what money we're giving up if we don't do the trust fund. What does that look like? But my number one thing is making sure that we're taking care of behavioral mental health for people who live in our county. We need to have a healthy county where we're taking care of the people who live here. And that's not just people who are on the streets. That's everyone who's part of our community. There are people struggling because of COVID and the situation they're in, who are out of jobs. And we need to make sure that we're helping all of our community right now.
Thank you. Amy Kruger.
So I'd have to do a little bit more research on trust funds and how they are working and how they are totally funded. So because government's really not in a position to be increasing the cost of living to our constituents. And in addition, dedicating streams of funding puts a restriction on their use. Funding sources should have to have some flexibility for emergency, just like at home. And there's around 800 housing trust authorities across the country now. And I'd like to, maybe research on what they're doing, how much money they have, how much more they've done with it. And again, another cost benefit analysis would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Hans Sage.
Well, I know I already mentioned options and incentives, but I'll say it again here because I just think that that's the better way to go than to raise taxes to pay for some of the housing things that we can probably find broad agreement about where we'd spend some of those dollars. But I don't think that we ought to be looking at raising a tax on this. And I do think that we should start with making the most of our $1406 that we have available to us through state sales taxes that are kept here in the county, and strengthening the package of incentives that we have to offer through a variety of means, before we go down the road of even creating a local trust fund. That said, I have been very supportive at the state level of the housing trust fund that's within the capital budget, and let's continue to do all we can to get dollars from that funding source from the state capital budget here into Pierce County.
Thank you. So moving on, there are two local option sales taxes available to Pierce County that have not yet been utilized, even though many other counties in all of the Western Washington counties have done one of them. One of them is the 0.1% for mental health, which has been done by most of the counties. And the other one is a 0.1% for housing. Each would generate millions of dollars annually to address these challenges, and each would cost taxpayers only 1 penny for each $10 they spend on taxable items which do not include food. Do you support either or both of these? Why or why not? And we'll start with Amy Kruger.
No, I do not support them. I am hearing from so many young couples and other folks that I'm out in the rural area, and they are feeling the burden of this shutdown, and they are highly stressed at trying to discern what the future will be. And the taxpayers are already paying for services through federal, state, and local taxes. This would be an additional burden on that. The state needs to focus more on funding for these issues. Western states should never have been lost its accreditation. That cost us millions. As for housing, when we're adding $1,000 to the price of a home, 1,824 people are priced out of the market. So these sales are needed to generate the revenue for solutions to get to affordable housing. So no, I wouldn't support an increase. We need to make do with what we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Hans Zeiger?
Well, I would oppose the housing tax. Again, I'd rather focus on incentives and options. But when it comes to mental health funding, it really comes down to how that money would be spent, as far as I'm concerned. I can tell you how I would make a decision about that, which is, I know that we need to make smart public investments in mental health and substance use disorder treatment. And for the mental health tax, it really depends on whether we have a plan to invest those funds in a way that gets the public a return on their investment, because government is infamous for scattershot spending. And that if I have an opportunity to help craft something like that, I want to make sure that it's done in a responsible way. So that's why I'm really encouraged by the conversations that are happening right now to do that planning work. And I'll just need to see what the plan is to be able to make a decision on it.
Thank you. Sarah Rumbaugh?
Well, as I said in the beginning, and I'll say now, I support a 0.1% for behavioral mental health. I've talked to people in my district in Puyallup who, when I talk to them about the problems we have with homelessness, and I talk about how we can help them with a 0.1% for behavioral mental health, they say, sure, I support that. So I've talked to people in my district. I also know that we have years of plans already put together at the county on what we're going to do with this funding. And what's really great is the city of Tacoma's passed their own 0.1% because they're so smart. And we wouldn't have to serve the city of Tacoma. We'd be serving the rest of the community. I think it's key that we reach out into the community to where people are suffering, and we provide that mental health services right where they're located. One of the things that we know is that when people are suffering, that their success is tied to if they can stay within their community. So the idea would be able to locate that those services in the areas where people are living out in the community. I did just say that for 0.1% for housing, I would like to first off see what all the choices are. I'd like us to use our $1,406 first. And I'd like to just, as an organization, as a county council, look at what our spending is and decide if that's plausible or if that's something we need to hold off on until we get through this pandemic that we have right now.
Thank you. So continuing on the topic of mental health specifically, mental health issues have been prominent in Pierce County for a number of years. Although new facilities have been established in the last few years, access to mental health treatment remains a significant issue, particularly given your answers related to the 0.1% sales tax. How would you address mental health services for Pierce County residents if elected to the county council? And we'll start with Hans Zeiger.
Well, every family is touched by mental illness or addiction in some way. And in my own family, I lost a cousin a couple of years ago who had battled substance use disorder for a number of years. He left behind a 9-year-old daughter, and we can do better for people in our families and our communities who face these issues in their lives. I remember visiting MDC, Metropolitan Development Corporation, about 4 years ago, and I saw their 16-bed detox check-in facility, and hearing that they were getting 600 to 800 calls a month at that time. Most of those folks they were having to turn away. And when somebody's ready to get help, we need to be there, make sure that they can get the help that they're asking for. For the past 4 years, our county's been moving in the right direction. The state has been stepping up its investment, but we just have a whole lot more work to do. And we need to continue the work that's being done at the county to increase the number of mental health co-responders who go out on 911 calls, to grow the number of community mental health beds. And we need to advocate for behavioral health funding at the state level and work with our state delegation to urge that at the very least, they not make cuts in this area as we come out of the COVID-19 era.
Thank you. Sarah Romba? You muted.
Thank you. So, mental health issues do affect everybody, but we have done an inadequate job in our county of serving everyone who has mental health issues. My husband is a judge, and just this weekend, he had a case where there was a person who just did not get the services, called 911. By that time, it was too late. Mental health professional went out there. Then they couldn't find him, and then he killed the woman that was in Gig Harbor. So the need for reaching people before they get to crisis stage is necessary. I believe that if we are serving all people, that means we're serving Black, Indigenous, people of color, and low wealth people, and that we are making sure that it's spread throughout our county is the number one thing. I think right now, most of the services are in the city of Tacoma, and it's just a burden on a city to have to serve everybody who's suffering mental illness. And the facilities are located in Tacoma. And I know that the plan that's being looked at by the county that they had put together that wanted to vote for in February was one that looked at providing these services throughout the county. Intake beds and places that provided addiction services. Those are some of the things we're looking at, but we can look to other counties like Kitsap County to see the wonderful work that they've done to change the picture of who's suffering mental illness and how they're helping people there as well.
Thank you. Amy Kruger.
Yeah, this is a really difficult topic because I had a friend who lost a nephew recently, and I'm looking up where in a 20-year period, the suicide rate in the US had increased 35%. And I don't understand how we get here. So I believe the county has been on the right track in addressing mental health needs and working to discern the causes. Is it drugs? Is it a mental illness, or is it mental health? Is there abuse involved? Fatherless homes? The lockdowns have been very difficult, especially on teenagers. And then are we engaging with our community organizations that can enhance our ability to reduce mental health episodes? And I'd like to have that definition defining mental health and mental illness. So, and if we can separate the mental illness, I really would be going after the state to doing a lot more in assistance for that. And it's where they need to own up for that responsibility. But I believe we're continuing to make applications for grants to help with that. And I believe researching the successes that other states have done as well would be very helpful. It's just a situation that's endemic to society, and we can't give up on it. We have to keep working it and looking for solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. So changing topics then, racial inequity. That's been a significant issue in our country forever and has been very prominent since the recent police killings of African Americans have been shown on television and social media. Racial inequity is especially prominent among those experiencing homelessness. How can Pierce County address this issue? And we'll start with Amy Kruger.
Well, this one, I see the headlines that are flooded with all of the race this and race that, and I do a lot of research. I look at a lot of different resources to find information. And I'd rather see us focus on forward positive policies that generate jobs and revenues. So I like to gather this additional information, and I was watching Larry Elder on Prager University, and he states that former President Barack Obama made the statement that racism is in our DNA. So what that indicates is that a person doesn't have a choice for their behavior. And Orlando Patterson, a Black Harvard University socialist, said that America is now the least racist white majority society in the world. America has a better record of legal protections of minorities than any other society, white or Black, and offers more opportunities to a greater number of Black persons than in any society, including those in all of Africa. So I think we need to focus on what has to be done to prevent the societal meltdown that can be expected from the state shutting down our ability to generate revenue and jobs, which are needed to assist our most vulnerable and advanced society. I think if we can, not focus on that and we'll look to work with each other individually than groups, that will have better access and better results in getting things where we can work with each other and solve these solve these issues. Thank you.
So I'm going to just add 15 seconds more for each of you. And
Sorry to go over.
What specifically would you see the county doing? Is there anything the county can do?
Well, the county now is doing a policy review. I don't know what all that will happen with that. There needs to be a dialogue one-on-one. If John Smith is a person of color and has an issue, discuss it. Where did it come from? Why does he have that? I don't know what all the solutions are with this. When it's in the headlines, I'm trying to find out exactly what the issue is. What caused the riots? I don't know. If they blame it on racism, I personally haven't seen it in my dealings.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Sarah Lumba.
Well, I think in order for us to really deal with racial inequality in our community, we need to set up an office of race and equity for the county. And we need to use that as a lens to kind of look at how we're doing all of our policies, how we're doing our hiring practices, how we're putting people on our commissions. And we should be an example for the rest of our county, every part of our county, of how we're going to do that. I think that's the first thing we need to do. And I think that lens will help us to better be able to show people that there is racial inequity in our community and how they might be, we would be able to do sort of like the city of Tacoma has now. We could do trainings for businesses to show them how they might provide racial equity in their offices. That's something that the city of Tacoma does. We also could, I think, just in general, there is a lot of racism in our zoning right now from the history of redlining. And I think that looking at how we're doing our zoning as well, but because I am on the Housing Equity Task Force for the Human Rights Commission, I think that the work that we're doing to look at the zoning map and how we can add racial equity to that is something that could happen in the county. And I think that this could be an example and a method that we might be able to use to spread throughout our county, not just in the city of Tacoma. So I think that there's a lot of things we could do to look at this issue, and it's everywhere, that there's racial inequity everywhere. It's in our criminal justice system, from the point of where people with the governor all the way down to the police, that we need to look at this system and how we're going to use that lens to alter the inevitable racial inequity that's been happening in our community right now and has been happening for years.
So thank you. Hans Zegu.
Well, we've become so aware, recently of the disparities in the racial disparities in arrests and other criminal justice matters, but we also know there are racial disparities in housing and in how our neighborhoods are arranged and separated. So when it comes to housing policy in particular, let's work to correct the history of racial segregation and redlining right here in Pierce County. As somebody who's studied the history of my own community in Puyallup extensively, I know that's part of the that's part of the history that we have to deal with. It's a history in lending and real estate covenants, and it resulted in the loss of wealth throughout entire neighborhoods, and it's compounded across generations. So let's use an equity lens as we evaluate decisions about community planning, zoning, and housing. And here are just some of the things that I want to work on to advance equity in housing if I'm privileged to serve on the county council. Number one, let's grow civic infrastructure around housing. And that includes making our neighborhoods more walkable, more accessible, more connected with transit and opportunities to spend time with each other as families and neighbors, but it also includes partnerships with schools. I've been so inspired by the work that the Tacoma Housing Authority has done to really build that and model how that can be done. And I'd love to say more about that, but I want to get to a couple other points. Another thing is we need to focus on strategies to encourage home ownership where people can grow their wealth and increase their capacity to provide for their families. And I worked on state legislation to create new tools for down payment assistance to help people buy a home. I could say more about the importance of Habitat for Humanity and how we ought to encourage that. And third, let's figure out ways that we can grow financial wealth within neighborhoods by reforming our zoning laws to allow for more neighborhood compatible businesses. And that's about allowing people to work closer to home or at home and invest in their families and invest in their neighborhoods. Thanks.
Thank you. So we have two more questions and then we'll do closing statements. So the first of those two is, what can the county do to support and enhance transit service for affordable housing residents and people who are experiencing homelessness? And we'll start with Sarah Lumbaugh.
So I think that we should, if we went ahead and made sure that the affordable housing was near transit, that's a good first start, is to make that sure that when we're asking developers to build, that we are trying to make sure those projects are in areas that are close to transit. That's one. The other one is, I know that when we look at the budget for Pierce Transit, that the fees for riding the bus only covers 10% of the full cost of Pierce Transit. So if there was a way to provide free bus passes to certain populations, that would be another way that we could help with, providing transit services to people who are living in affordable housing. So those are two ideas I have.
Thank you. Hans Zeige.
Well, I look forward to being engaged as a partner with Pierce Transit as a council member and working to move transit forward in District 2. I think probably the most important thing in terms of increasing the funding for Pierce Transit is to look out for Pierce County's transit needs in the next state transportation package. I think really in the next couple of years, there's going to be a very serious discussion at the state level about the next generation of transportation investments. And, we ought to collaborate with other local agencies as we're putting together our legislative agenda and being advocates in that role to secure as many state dollars as possible for things like public transit. And of course, there's a number of other transportation projects that we need to be advocating for as well.
Thank you. Amy Kruger.
So, the transit is a PBTA corporation and it is created by the state. So increasing the tax on that is up to the taxpayers, but I know that we are a civil society and that people do want to have transit. So based on my interactions with the public, it's not that they're against expanded services, they're just not in a position to increase their cost of living. I'd like to see the policy infrastructure be designed to accommodate increased in the transit service through maybe more of the shorter buses and more routes on that. I'd like to see engagement with private sector that has, that we have the borders for that. I recall working with a man at the state level. He had a business where he was independent and he was able to compete with transit and offer short trips for people that were out in the rural areas. So it's a work in progress. I'd like to see more of it. We have 176 in a growing area. So it will be a matter of looking for solutions and brainstorming with others.
Thank you. So this is the last question. It's back to housing per se. What should the role of the county's public housing authorities, Pierce County Housing Authority and Tacoma Housing Authority, and Puyallup Tribal Housing Authority, and nonprofit housing developers. What is or should be the county's relationship or partnership with them? We'll start with Hans Seiger.
Well, I first became acquainted with Tacoma Housing Authority's work as a fairly new member of the State House, learning about the McCarver project. And as I mentioned in one of the other questions just a moment ago, and I sponsored legislation, passed legislation to encourage more partnerships between school districts and housing authorities to promote student success. I was also a supporter in the House of the Homeless Student Stability Act because of the good work that I had seen happening through THA. And I've been a supporter of the Arlington Drive Youth Campus and the state capital budget. Excited to see that work going forward. And they just do such innovative work. And I'm not just saying that because Michael Mira is one of the hosts here, and but Michael does a great job advocating for housing authorities at every level. And I look forward to continuing that relationship at the county level and seeing how I can support that work.
Thank you. Amy Kruger.
Yes. Basically, that we all share ideas, work out a plan, and execute that, keeping it simple. I remember a few years ago, I did do a tour with the MDC in the areas, and actually it was quite impressive, the works that had been done, the shelter and the homes and the apartments that people were able to live in, through all this collaborative effort. So I would like to see continuing that and improving upon the things that we do so well already. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Lumba.
I believe that being partners with organizations like the Tacoma Housing Authority is a plus for our county, because the Tacoma Housing Authority is a well-run organization that is very creative with what they do. And they have an ability to see what the need is and try to find a way to make that happen. And so I feel like being a partner with them is great. The Pierce County Housing Authority has many issues that need to be worked out that I hope that our county executive takes seriously in the next few months to work out. But I also believe that one of the things that we need to do is find those or the communities that are suffering, such as the young adults that were in need, the homeless that were in need of a place. And the Tacoma Housing Authority worked on the Arlington Drive project is a way for us to combine the necessity for one group of people with the structure of an organization like the Housing Authority to make good things happen in our community. And so I would hope that we would continue to have relationships like that and help them get the funding that they need to do the work that they do. Because I think that when you work hand in hand, you get a lot more done. And I'd like to see more of that happen throughout our county, because their reach is only 3 miles outside of Tacoma. So it'd be good for us to figure out how to work with these other entities to make sure that we're providing for our full county.
Thank you. So now it's time for closing statements, and each candidate has up to 1 minute, and we're going to reverse the order so that it's the opposite of how you did your opening statements. So we're going to start with Amy Kruger.
Thank you. So I've certainly appreciated this opportunity to share a bit about who I am and why I'm here. And it's hard to believe that over 25 years of being involved in politics and policies have passed by. Some call that a commitment, others call it crazy. The 15 years of working directly with District 3 property owners, seniors, veterans, and families to solve local problems means you have an experienced representative in me ready to serve. So as your council member, I'll be reviewing policies as you would, wanting a limited government, defending family values, and those in need, generating jobs and raising our standard of living. I believe I have the right temperament for the job. I'm a good listener. No one knows what to expect in 2021, but I do know that we have much to address in terms of our public services. I won't be perfect, but I will be passionate in finding viable and affordable solutions to the issues that matter to you. I am Amy Kruger, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And the other candidate in District 3 is Joe Zeichkin, who was not able to be here. So the two candidates in District 2 are Hans Seiger and Sarah Lumba, and Hans Seiger will go first.
Well, thank you again for this opportunity to have a good discussion about housing concerns and homelessness and a number of issues that we've talked about this evening. And I appreciate Cynthia and Terry and Michael for your roles in this. Thanks, Cynthia, for moderating this. I hope people will feel free in the coming weeks as we lead up to the election to contact me. You can easily find my phone number and email address out there, and my website. And I hope you'll get in touch with me if you've got concerns or you've got questions, or if you've got an idea you want to float by me. And if I'm fortunate to be elected, I hope that you will keep in touch. I've so enjoyed the relationship that I've had with the Tacoma-Pierce County Affordable Housing Consortium, as well as League of Women Voters, over the last 10 years, and look forward to continuing that. And I believe that local government is a place where people can get engaged and make a difference. And hopefully most of the time, party doesn't matter so much. We can discuss ideas and figure out solutions and work together to do great things. I want to be a part of that at a time when I believe Pierce County is poised for greatness. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Sarah Rumbon.
Thank you so much for putting this forum together. I think it's a fabulous idea, and I'd love to see other organizations do things like this on issues that are important in our community. I guess the question is, what type of community do we want to have? I believe that we want to have a community that shows compassion for everyone. And we have issues that are, I believe, issues that aren't partisan. And I don't think homelessness is partisan. And I think that we need to be a community that cares. And so that means we need to take care of the homeless problem we have. We need to make affordable housing a priority. And we need to pass a 0.1% to help people who are suffering in our community. I'm running for office because those are issues that I came up with back in January, and they are definitely issues that have become even more prominent and noticeable because of the pandemic. I want to thank you again for this time today, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with your supporters. Thank you.
Thank you. And right now, that concludes our candidate forum, except for some final comments from me. And so, first of all, thank you to all of you candidates for being here tonight. This was a real contribution to our community, and we appreciate it. I also want to thank our co-host, the Affordable Housing Consortium. I want to thank our timer, Terry Baker, and then the League of Women Voters Voter Services Committee that helped pull this together. For the viewers, I want you to know that a recording of this video will be online at our website by tomorrow morning. Please encourage others to watch it. And please be sure to vote for the candidate of your choice when the ballots come out before November 3rd. You should be getting them by the end of next week. Please mail or use the drop box as early as possible. And then be sure also to read your voters pamphlet. Look up vote411.org, which is the National League of Women Voters website that compares candidate statements across the board all the way down to the local level. And you can find answers to questions that were posed that were a little different than some of these. So thank you again for watching, and don't forget to vote by November 3rd. Good evening. Have a nice evening.